As per usual with my videos, we are operating on the good faith notion of better late than never. Hey friends, it's Ren, and today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 books of 2020. We made it through 2020. I'm so happy. I know that like years are an arbitrary thing, but sometimes it really does feel good to just like, it feels like a clean slate based on this arbitrary time that we have all just collectively decided is the new year. But I will say, as crap as 2020 was, I had a very good reading year in 2020. I read 101 books. I'm very excited about it. Thank you, hold your applause. And a lot of them were good. I definitely got some new favorites out of this year, which I'm gonna be talking to you about right now. These are in order. These are not a randomly picked order. So while I love all of these dearly, I love some more than others. First up, we have Beloved by Toni Morrison. This is inarguably probably the best written book out of all of these. Just because it's not my absolute favorite of the year doesn't mean that it is not an incredible book. So this book is about a former slave named Sethi who escaped slavery but can't seem to completely rid herself of the absolute trauma that is slavery and being black during this time period. This book is an extremely difficult read. It's really, in terms of content and in terms of writing style and sort of understanding everything that's going on, which is why I waited so long to pick it up. I kept reading like the first chapter and I'm like, I really don't understand what's going on. And so I would read it and reread it and reread it, and then finally I was like, you know what, this is ridiculous. I'm just gonna try to power through, and I did. And sometimes I had to like look stuff up to make sure that I knew what was going on, and I'm gonna tell you a secret. That's fine. That doesn't make you stupid. Sometimes you just need a little extra help to understand what's going on in a book, especially when it has the sort of fabulism that exists within Beloved. I just think this book is an absolute masterclass in writing, specifically like writing fabulism and weaving magic into sort of everyday scenarios, as well as writing about the sort of generational trauma that exists within slavery and within America because of the history of slavery that we have in this country. This is one of the books that blew me away the most in terms of writing, like, that I've ever read in my entire life. So I would highly encourage picking it up. I know a lot of people get stuck, I guess, with this one the same way that I did, trying to understand what's happening within the narrative, but I think that you need to just like read a whole chapter. Like, I would definitely not stop and start and stop and start as you try to figure out what's going on. I think you kind of just need to get lost in the narrative style. Maybe look things up every couple of chapters, because I think that the writing is really done purposefully so that it carries you along through the story. So yeah, love Beloved. An incredible book. Next, we have a very different book, and it is If We Were Villains by ML Rio. I read this at the very beginning of the year and I was enthralled by it. I said at the time that I think that I might like it more than The Secret History. I don't. I think I was just like caught up in the euphoria of finding a book that like is my brand, really. So this is about a group of students studying Shakespeare, and they get a little too caught up in their personal drama and roles and archetypes and end up like trying to, I mean, there's a murder. Let's just say that. There's a murder. Because it's a dark academia novel, of course there's a murder. This book is not the best written book in the world. There's a lot of things about it that are just absolutely ridiculous. And it obviously is very pretentious and very pandering to people who love Shakespeare. But even with that said, I'm sorry, like, I just love it. It's just such a joy for me to read. I would be interested to read it again after, because I read this in February, so to read it February this year with a year between might be interesting. But yeah, it's just exactly my aesthetic. And honestly, that's pretty much the biggest reason why I love this book so much. I'm not gonna lie to you and be like, I actually really love the plot and I actually really love the characters. Although I like the characters well enough. I honestly just love the vibes. And if I can't be honest with you guys, who can I be honest with? So that's If We Were Villains. Next up, we have Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. You guys, this book sent me. I read this for my Reluctant Reader romance series, and it was the only one out of all of those that I actually liked. I loved how sweet and cute and hot. Like, they were just the perfect combination of everything, along with just like the chronic pain rep and the black rep. It's just the perfect romance novel. I would put this right up there. If you know, my favorite book last year was Red, White, and Royal Blue. I would put this right up there with just like the books that I read to make me feel happy. You know, like, it just warms the cockles of my heart. I want to date both Red and Chloe so bad. I just realized I did not explain this book. So basically, so this is about a woman named Chloe Brown who wants to get a life. She wants to do things that are exciting and that people might not expect of her. And so to do this, she enlists the help of her, I think he's the building manager, the handyman they say, but I think he's the building manager, Red, who helps her because he's the best. I don't know what to tell you guys. Like, this is just so cute. Read this book if you haven't already. I cannot believe I haven't read the sequel, Take a Hint, Danny Brown, yet. It's on hella hold from the library, so that's a big part of why, but oh yeah, just read this. Just read this. I had this for free and then I went out and bought a physical copy because I loved it so much. It's just iconic. So next up we have Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. This is about a boy named Yadriel who is a trans boy, and he is transitioning and wants to prove to his family that he is a real brujo, which is a male witch. And in order to do this, he tries to summon a spirit from the dead, and it goes awry because he summons the wrong one. He summons Julian, who is his love interest in this, and boy oh boy, this was just such a sweet novel. I think that this just culturally was so interesting. I love like reading about Latinx culture, just appreciating it from afar. Obviously not in an appropriative way. I'm not, you know, the core demographic of people buying Sugar Skull merch at Target, but I just really am an appreciator of that culture. I think it's really beautiful, and I love seeing it written in books, which is why I was so just floored by this novel. I thought it was done so brilliantly. I could not believe that this was a debut from Aiden Thomas. I was blown away. Absolutely the biggest draw for me was the way that culture was written about in this book, and especially the integration with in old culture, in new, well, not new ideas, but like the modern day and acceptance of trans people. I thought it was done so well, and that was the main thing that I liked, but I also really liked the romance between Yadriel and Julian because they were just so cute and they were so sweet together. And I love the way that Julian especially was written, because he could have gotten so tropey so fast because he is kind of like that bad boy, but he was just written so sincerely and so warmly, and Aiden Thomas obviously loved him. So I don't know, it just was such a heartwarming read and such a nice thing to read at the end of the year. I read this in, I think, October or September, and it was just a nice read. Especially because I was feeling a little slumpy towards my 100 book mark. So yeah, this was a great read. If you haven't read it already, I would highly encourage you to pick it up. Next I have The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. This is a story about a group of indigenous men who had previously gone on a hunting trip where they did something that they shouldn't have, and it is coming back to bite them later on. I'm trying to do this without giving you that much information because I had very little information going into this, and I preferred it that way. I read this during the Halloween times because I was just interested in reading some horror, and boy oh boy, did this completely knock me off my feet. I was completely taken off guard. I shouldn't say I knew. I had a feeling that I was gonna like it because it just sounded like the kind of thing that interests me, but I had no idea that I was going to love it as much as I did. Like, the experience was so gripping the entire time. I partially read, partially listened to the audiobook, and honestly, the audiobook I would also highly recommend because I loved the narrator so much. It was just such a masterclass in creating tension. I needed, as I said, I think in the video that I said, I needed a deep tissue massage after I read this because I was so tense, especially towards the end. It was just, oh, it really, I can't even describe the emotions. It wasn't that scary to me. Like, I didn't come away feeling really frightened, but it clearly is like a sort of gothic type horror, and first of all, that's my favorite brand other than Cosmic, but it just was so unsettling the entire time I was reading it, and the characters were great. I saw a lot of people say, well, not a lot of people, but some people on Goodreads say that it was slow. I get where you're coming from, but I am personally a character-driven reader, so I think that the build-up was pretty necessary to understand these men, to understand their lives, and to understand how their psyche changed because of the things that happen in this book. So, highly, highly recommend it. Even if you aren't a reader of horror, just give it a try, because my god, it was so good. So the next book is the only one that I don't have a physical copy of, tragically, because I got it from the library, but I will be buying one at some point when I can buy things again, and that is In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. Holy hell, this is my favorite memoir that I've ever read. It is one of those books where you're like, maybe I'm not a writer. Maybe I can't actually write. Maybe I can't even string a sentence together, because she's got it all figured out. So this is a memoir, and it mostly centers around Machado's experiences in a abusive relationship, specifically a female-female relationship, and it is just, I'm gonna cry literally just thinking about it. It is an absolutely beautifully written book. I mean, we know that I'm a crier on this channel, but like, this book really did send me into just an absolute fit. This memoir is just so, like, she did such a brilliant job of invoking the dreamlike state that happens in both dreams and in your memory that occurs when something is just traumatic and mildly unbelievable, and you're like, have been being gaslit by someone and you're not sure what reality is. The same thing that occurs in dreams. It just, oh, I could talk about this book forever and not make any sense, because it's just so like internal. I have a very internal, it got me. So yeah, I don't know how to talk about this book in any sort of intellectual capacity, but yeah. I just realized that I didn't include one of my absolute favorite books from this year. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's embarrassing. I'm embarrassed of myself. I can't believe I did that. I'm not gonna tell you which one I forgot. We're just gonna keep moving forward. Next we have The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. This is about a young boy who gets picked up for a crime that he is not responsible for, and gets sent to a school for boys that is just absolutely abusive. I thought this book was absolutely incredible. I think Colson Whitehead is one of the great American novelists of our generation, if I'm being honest. He just really knows how to tell a story. This book in particular, I just thought was absolutely, because I read The Underground Railroad, which I liked, but I didn't like as much as this. I thought this was just brilliantly done. The way that Colson Whitehead writes is very conducive to this kind of story, because he writes in a very almost clinical style, and it works for this story because it kind of comes into two separate time periods. So it's when they were at the school and then later on when they're grown. It works really well because you can tell the men are trying to separate their thoughts and their feelings and their personalities and being from the time that they spend at this school. So Colson Whitehead's sort of clinical style of writing, removing from the events, works really, really well in this context. The conversation specifically around Martin Luther King and the way that the main character sort of thinks about Martin Luther King and the way that he reacts to him before and after his time at the school, it's brilliant. I couldn't speak highly enough about this book if I tried. I just think it's one of the absolute best books that has come out in like 10 years, so I love it. Please read it if you haven't already. Very sad, but amazing. Next, for lighter fare, we have House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. Oh my god, this book. Okay, so this is about Linus, who is kind of a social worker in this sort of magical dystopian type world, and he gets sent on this mission to go to a orphanage that has very dangerous children in it, and he meets Arthur, who is the sort of head of the orphanage, and all the kids, and this book warms the cockles of my frozen heart. I don't know how to talk about this book because there's not a ton to like discuss in terms of literary merit beyond just it's a feel-good story. Perfect for what it is, you know? Like, what it is just a found family story, a love story, a story about warmth and kindness and doing what's right for yourself and going against the status quo to protect the ones you love. It's just such a simple story, but so powerful. Everything about it is just heartwarming. Even the writing style is just so whimsical. I love it so much. If you ever have a bad day, just pick up this book. Shauna McGuire on the front cover says this book is very close to perfect. I agree with that because it's not perfect like if you're comparing it to like Beloved, but things can be perfect for what they are. You know what I mean? It is a perfect novel for what it is, and I absolutely love it. Next we have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by Miss V.E. Schwab. So this book I knew I was going to like. It took me by surprise how much I reacted to it emotionally, I would say. It just hit right for me. So for those of you who don't know, I can't imagine that you don't because this book is talked about everywhere. This is about a girl named Addie LaRue who is in a circumstance that she does not want to be in, so she prays to a god that she shouldn't have prayed to. He grants her wish to have complete freedom, and he twists that wish into meaning that she can live forever but no one remembers her, so she never really has to deal with any consequences. And then years and years and years afterwards, she stumbles into a shop and someone remembers her. This book just, sometimes you read a book and it feels like it was written just for you, and that's how I felt about Addie. It was such a personal reading experience for me that I can't possibly talk about it in any sort of objective way. Sometimes a book is just really personal to you and you can't really discuss why in any sort of way that makes sense to other people outside of your brain, but it really just felt like V.E. Schwab was like, oh, let's take, you know, Ren's anxieties and thoughts about life and the world and just put it into story format, and that's what it felt like to me. So I mean, this book is not going to be for everyone. I definitely know that, and I don't know that I would like even recommend it because again, I can't say that like I would be ever be able to speak about this objectively. It was perfect for me, and that's how I decide my favorite books. So there you go. For number 2, we have Felix Ever After by Case and Calendar. I'm sure you all saw this coming. So this is a book about Felix Love. He is a trans boy and he is dealing with all the things that come with that, being a teenager, being trans, being gay, being black, and he is sort of insecure about all of those things and worried that those things are making him unlovable. All the while, he has someone who has been sending him transphobic messages, and he has a idea maybe about who it is, and so he starts blackmailing, or not blackmailing, catfishing that person, and chaos ensues. I feel like I've made it very clear about how much I love this book by now. I just thought it was an absolute delight of a story. I thought that it was the first book that I read in a while that was like a contemporary YA where I was like, yeah, this is teenagers. Like, it felt like teenagers to me. I wish that I had this book when I was growing up. Like, it would have helped me in so many ways, but to have it now is even better. I just really related to Felix. He's probably my favorite character of the year. I really related to him and the way that he was thinking about things and the insecurities that he had. And this is another one kind of like Addie, but I would recommend this one to everyone. It's just such a personal read for me. Like, I can't get I don't want to. I could, but I don't want to get too into why like this book meant as much as it did to me. But I think that even if you don't come from the same place that I'm coming from, that you will still find plenty of things to love about this book. I just think it's just such a good book. Not even a YA book, just a book. It's a good book, so please pick it up if you haven't already. I know it's very popular, and I gave away like 20 copies on Twitter. That was a choice that I made. But yeah, please pick it up if you haven't already. It is just absolutely brilliant. And finally, we have number one, my number one favorite book. This one might be a surprise because I have liked it the more and more that I keep thinking about it. And that is why it's making number one on this list. It has not left me since I read it, and it is Morris by E.M. Forster. Oh god, this book. Okay. This book is about Morris, the title character, who is boring. He's a boring man in every single way. He's pretentious, he just wants to make money, he's classist, and he's a misogynist in every single way, except for the fact that he is gay and living in the Edwardian time period. This follows him through his life, through his relationship with a man named Clive, and I think about this book almost daily. I wish that I was kidding, but I just think about this book constantly, and the way that it is written so beautifully, the way that Morris like grows through the entire book, and just his relationships are just absolutely fascinating to me, and I hold such a dear place in my heart for it. I could write an absolute master's thesis on this because I just find it so compelling. Specifically the character work in this I think is absolutely brilliant. And if you don't know, E.M. Forster is a gay man, or was a gay man, who did live during this time period, and a big reason why it wasn't published until I think it was 1971, yeah, is because gay men were not supposed to have happy endings. But in this book, he does. This book just has like I think it does just such a brilliant job of showing how someone can be radicalized by love alone, by something that is specific to them, even though in any other way they would be completely normal and they would just completely follow the structure of society. But this one trait that he has that everyone has somehow decided is wrong has completely turned him against the system. I wish more people would read it. I can't wait to read more of Forster's work. I don't think I'll love anything as much as I love Morris, but yeah. I love it so much. I hope that any of that made any kind of sense for any of you. So those are all my favorites for 2020. I'm so, like, looking at this stack makes me really happy because I genuinely did find some books that are just my absolute favorite books of all time now, and it makes me really, really happy to have found them, and really, really grateful to be on YouTube and BookTube specifically to talk about these things and to talk about the things that I love. And I'm really looking forward to trying to make more content this year. I know that I kind of like fade in and out, but I really do love BookTube, and I really do care about you guys, and I care about talking about stuff, and I care about the connections that I make here. So I'm looking forward in the new year to making more content and to having more discussions with you guys. So thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it, and I hope you have a wonderful 2021. Bye!